Welcome, Jim Greenberg from Union Confectionery Machinery Company, co-president of Union. Hi, Jim.
Hi, David. How are you?
I'm great. Jim, you and I worked on a project a long time ago in upstate New York, and I wanted to drag out some old pictures and have you share your knowledge a little bit with some equipment. Most people don't ever get in a chocolate factory. Some people get behind the counter in a chocolatier in town, but very few people get to see something like this. Take a look at this Winnower. This is a piece of equipment that we had at a sale that you and I did many, many years ago. Tell our viewers about this. What does this thing do and how does it work?
Okay, so this piece of equipment actually came from the Nestle chocolate factory in Fulton, New York, outside of Syracuse, and is used to remove the shell from cocoa beans at a very, very high rate of output, upwards of 10,000 pounds per hour.
10,000 pounds per hour.
Correct.
So if somebody's making batches of this at home, how long would it take them to do 10,000 pounds?
By the time they actually got the product into the machine, it wouldn't be worth their time to wait for what was coming out.
So this is huge. This piece of equipment is certainly industrial. And how many companies in the world could use this piece of equipment right now?
Around the world, easily hundreds. In this country, maybe a dozen. We have seen very little growth as far as the number of large cocoa processors in this country. What we have seen, though, is an uptick of the number of small batch craft chocolate makers who numbered only a few 15 years ago and now number almost 300 in the United States.
What do you liken that to, Jim?
So what we saw in the 2008 financial crisis was people either being relieved of their jobs or leaving their jobs because they felt unsatisfied and decided they wanted to do something more creative. And we saw this very same thing happen during COVID, where the number of startup companies in this country, especially food businesses, are at record highs.
So people started making chocolate and confectionery as a hobby or as small craft business, not unlike a craft brewery?
Well, they started off as hobbyists, and some of them remained as hobbyists, and others have commercialized their business and are now making a living at it.
So those are those high-end, expensive 98% cocoa chocolate bars that you see at the checkout counter?
Correct.
Interesting. Has that impacted the sales of the big companies very much?
Well, the math that I like to provide to people is that less than 1% of all the chocolate companies in this country produce 99.5% of all of the chocolate. And the remainder are these small craft makers, medium and small size companies that actually represent such a small segment of what is about a $15 billion market.
So we can compare it to the craft brew industry just a little bit, because the craft brew industry really had an impact, although not on a grand scale. It had an impact and it made a dent on the big brewers, and they changed the way they did it and came out with their own craft brews to try and compete. But you're not seeing that in the chocolate industry.
No, they don't have the ability to impact the marketplace because they don't have the scale in which to be able to enter the market at that type of capacity.
Good point. Let's go back to this piece of equipment, though. How long does something like this last?
Oh, equipment like this has a usable life, if it's well maintained, well over 60 years.
60 years. Has the computer numerical control wave that hit machine tools impacted the chocolate industry very much?
Not so much on the processing side, more so on the packaging side of the industry, because that's where speed is important. It starts with machines like flow wrappers and pick-and-place robotic systems. But as far as process equipment, grinders, refiners, and machinery like that, they're all motor-driven machines, and they really don't have the need to be servo or CNC.
Let's talk about this grinder. There's a ball mill here. This was from the same factory. Tell us about that piece.
Okay, so that piece of equipment was used to actually grind chocolate liquor, which is a byproduct of taking cocoa beans and roasting them after they come through the winnower. The byproduct of the winnower is what they call the cocoa nib, is where the heart of all the mass is, the butter and the liquor, and this machine's responsible for liquefying that material.
Is there anything between the winnower and the mill?
Oh, sure. There's lots of different machines that are used. Pre-grinding equipment and then final machinery that's used for particle reduction. So not unlike a food processing plant where they might be producing sugar or anything else, there's a variety of equipment that's used to get from point A to point B.
And it's very, very specialized. I've only been in a few of these plants, and for the big name companies, I've done some projects over the course of the years. But you are really the source of information for this kind of equipment, and I do appreciate you counseling me when the time comes up, and I do appreciate your help here and sharing your knowledge with us on Blackbird TV. Thanks, Jim.
My pleasure.